The Secret Weapon, Birth of America's Psychic Spies. Start with fear. It's the early 1970s, and Washington keeps hearing the same whispers. The Soviets are funding psychic research, telepathy labs, telekinesis trials, classified projects with results nobody can easily dismiss. In a Cold War built on counters and counters to counters, the Pentagon asks a question it hates. What if we're behind on something we can't measure? That's when a small stream of money finds its way to Menlo Park, to a place known for lasers and patents, not prophecy, Stanford Research Institute. There, two physicists, Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ, build a weird, careful bridge between intuition and instrumentation. They aren't recruiting fortune tellers. They're stress testing perception. And then an artist from Colorado walks in with a quiet certainty and a stubborn streak. Ingo Swann doesn't pitch magic. He pitches method. If you can describe a hidden object under strict conditions, he says, then you've got a signal. If you can do it again, under tighter conditions, you've got a protocol. Here's how they harden it. Strip away clues. Blind the viewer. Replace leading questions with neutral prompts. Record everything. They start calling it remote viewing, and soon it becomes coordinate remote viewing, with sequences and stages, ideograms, sensory descriptors, sketches, then structure. No nouns at first, just qualities. Rough, metallic, cold, vertical, low resonance. A quick mark on paper captures a first impulse, an ideogram like a seismic blip, then the viewer unpacks it with controlled passes. The analyst pushes back any labels. Functions over names. Describe, don't conclude. Early sessions make people uncomfortable because they land. A hidden machine part is sketched with its fins and voids in the right places. A building layout described from 1,000 miles away matches later photographs. An outbounder, a team member who walks to a random site, phones in laughter because the viewer just said fountain, reflective, windy spray, and he's standing at a plaza with a fountain throwing mist. Not every hit is clean. Plenty wobble. But enough specific lines keep crossing reality that the reports move out of the lab and into the hands of people who brief actual operations. The pipeline forms almost by accident. The Army's INSCOM needs edge cases for intelligence. The Defense Intelligence Agency listens because if even 5% of this is actionable, it's cheaper than satellites and faster than agents. The CIA watches warily from the doorway, paying sometimes, pulling back when the ridicule risk spikes. Names change, Skane 8, Grill Flame, Center Lane, but the core keeps working. Sealed targets, disciplined sessions, after-action feedback whenever possible. The files develop a rhythm, target numbers in envelopes, viewer cooldowns, transcripts with timestamps, and pages of charcoal sketches that look like architecture notes from a dream. Meanwhile, inside the rooms, there's a practical terror. Distance seems to stop mattering. A warehouse 10 miles away feels the same distance as a facility across an ocean. If the signal really doesn't care about miles, then geography, one of intelligence's oldest gatekeepers, just cracked. That raises stakes. If an analyst can't put a fence around the possible, how do you keep it from running off a cliff? They fix it with guardrails. No front loading. No hand gestures. No good job mid-session. Just neutral tones and a mantra. Stay with the signal. Underneath, another rule emerged: starve the ego, feed the data. The second a viewer feels praised, the storytelling brain takes the wheel. Puthoff and Targ publish cautiously in peer-reviewed corners. Nature gets a nod. Internal memos circulate with caveats stacked like sandbags. Inside the Army, a sergeant learns to run a session with a poker face because if his eyebrow jumps, the viewer will chase it. Outside, a skeptical physicist shows up, tries it, and leaves muttering that something's happening, though he doesn't like the word for it. A colonel brings in a problem, describe a site nobody in the room has seen, and gets back contours and functions. He can check against later reconnaissance. Enough aligns to keep the lights on. Micro-stories start accumulating, the kind that stick to people. A viewer draws a crane above water, circles a box, writes hollow ringing, and a month later a cable news blip mentions a shipyard accident at a location that matches the coordinates. A case officer who laughed in the lobby comes back for a second briefing, this time without the smile because his boss asked for whatever those Menlo Park people have. Meanwhile, inside SRI, they keep sanding down the mystical edges. They teach ideogram drills like push-ups. They catalog sensory bleed, tastes, pressures, tones that show up across viewers at similar targets. The psychology is simple and brutal. Repetition undercuts doubt. Convergence quiets the inner heckler. And still, fear keeps writing the checks. If the Soviets can do this, a memo says between the lines, we can't be the ones who didn't look. Some in the building are true believers. More are pragmatists with a budget line and a promise. Use it as one input among many. Never bet the mission on it, but don't ignore it either. The best remote viewers, like Joe McMoneygle, start racking scores that force serious conversations. Suddenly, the joke at the water cooler isn't as safe to tell. In that atmosphere, an inevitable question slips out during a planning meeting. How far can this go? If a warehouse reads like a warehouse no matter the miles, what about a planet? Someone taps a folder, Pioneer. Someone else says Voyager. The conversation goes quiet for a beat, not because it's ridiculous, but because it's tempting. You can't drive to Jupiter. You can't phone a friend for feedback. But as a stress test, of protocol, of signal, of the human operator under hostile physics, it's perfect. A finger points at the sky. The room makes space for the attempt. The proving ground, credibility moments that kept funding alive. Start with the name that made briefers sit straighter, Joe McMoneygle. Former Army intelligence, calm voice, no theatrics. He sits, takes the target number, and starts laying down lines that later match facilities nobody in the room had clearance to see at the time. Cooling towers, oddly spaced vents, a gantry nobody expected, drawn before the photo intel landed. Not perfect, never perfect, but specific in ways that made the post-brief silence long. They built the proving ground with beacon and outbounder trials. One team member walked to a random site, sealed by a randomizer. The viewer, blind to any of it, had to describe where that human body stood. Tall verticals, metallic smell, echo cold shade, he'd say. The outbounder, standing under a bridge in a breezy industrial lot, grinned at the echo. They ran it again and again, stacking statistics against anecdote. In program memos, phrases like beyond chance started showing up next to caveats about small samples and human variance. Protocol became a survival instinct. They fought front-loading like a fire. If an analyst unconsciously nodded when a sketch resembled a crane, the viewer might chase the nod instead of the target. So guardrails got rigid. No nouns until functions appear. No good or close midstream. No could it be, at all. Everything written, everything time-stamped. Later, when the feedback came, photos, measurements, site visits, they'd grade against specifics. Number of bays, orientation of roads, presence of water, mechanical functions described. The more granular the scoring, the harder it was to handwave hits. Quietly, they hacked human bias, constrain language, flatten tone, and you starve the brain's urge to confabulate. Inside the building, the fights weren't just about data. They were about ridicule. A colonel who'd seen a sketch align with a restricted map would argue for more tasking. A career risk manager would ask how to brief a general without detonating the room. We're not selling psychics, someone would say. We're selling an adjunct collection method with cost advantages. It sounded dry, it kept doors open. Meanwhile, the viewers kept showing up, grinding through ideogram drills that left fingertips smudged and shoulders sore. Microstories kept funding alive more than charts ever did. A session calls out, arched hollow, resonant, periodic clatter, and a month later a SIGINT report mentions rail stock moving through a curved maintenance shed at the very coordinates. A viewer notes subterranean, reinforced coolant smell, and a later defector debrief includes a bunkered server room with condensation and a harsh chemical odor. These weren't clean bullseyes, they were clusters of right enough detail that, taken together, made it hard to shut the door. When skeptics came, and they always came, program staff did something smart. They recruited them for red team runs. Task us, they said. Pick the outbounder. Hold the envelope. A physicist who'd arrived to debunk left muttering that the hit rate wasn't chance, even. If he hated every explanation on offer, he wrote a private memo, signal present, mechanism unknown, which became a quiet tagline inside the unit. Joe's sessions with facilities later confirmed by satellite weren't the only anchors. There were hostage sketches that mapped room geometry within usable tolerances. There were descriptions of unique cranes, odd heating units, the feel of wind patterns around structures, strange, sensory details that weren't in newspapers and didn't match easy guesses. Analysts learned to parse for function. Intake, processing, exhaust mattered more than factory. When those functions matched later images, the marks in the margin were hard to ignore. Even the failures worked as teaching tools. When a viewer drifted into storytelling, nouns too early, narratives too clean, the grade tanked. They flagged those transcripts with AOL for analytical overlay, a scarlet letter that stung enough to keep discipline tight next time. Over months, the signal got leaner. Fewer flourishes, more textures, temperatures, pressures, vector directions, resonances. The language of the program got strange and precise, like engineering from memory. The funding memos read like hedged bets. Preponderance of suggestive correlations, one line would say, followed by insufficient for standalone tasking. But money still moved because case officers kept finding edges in the transcripts they couldn't find anywhere else. In the privacy of closed-door briefings, one colonel said it out loud. "If this gives me a 2-week head start on something I was going to learn anyway, I'll pay for that twice." That's the ground truth of why the checks didn't stop. Not because anyone proved a mechanism, but because specific, verifiable crumbs showed up too often to dismiss. Aerial imagery confirmed the odd rectangle. Signals intelligence confirmed the hum. A later walkthrough confirmed the distance between pillars. Enough of those, and the risk managers looked at each other and shrugged. Keep it small, keep it quiet, keep it going. With Washington half convinced and half hiding its smile, curiosity crept back in. If the method worked across cities and continents, what happened when you aimed it at the outer dark? The proving ground had done its job. Now a few people wanted to stress the steel. Eyes tilted skyward, and the room made space for a target nobody could ever visit. The selector. Why target Jupiter at all? Inside the unit, motives split along a quiet line. One camp wanted a clean stress test, something so far outside normal feedback loops that any crisp structure in the data would mean the protocol held under pressure. The other camp had a stack of mission folders flagged with Pioneer and Voyager telemetry oddities, subtle magnetic wiggles, unresolved thermal signatures, the kind of anomalies that make engineers shrug and analysts wonder. Both impulses pointed the same direction. Jupiter wasn't just big, it was complicated. If remote viewing could swim in that chaos and still surface with structure, then the method had teeth. There was a strategic lens too, the cold calculus that funds weird questions. The Jovian system is a crossroads, massive gravity well, moon network, radiation belts like warning tape. If anyone built infrastructure out there, relay nodes, observation posts, resource harvesters, it would sit where physics already does half the work. Europa and Ganymede, with their ice and oceans, drew scientific interest. But the planet itself, with banded jets and storms older than recorded history, offered concealment. Hide inside noise, let the weather erase your edges, and you can work for a long time without being seen. SRI's culture made the leap easier. They'd already used training as a shield for exploratory targets, ancient sites, deep ocean wrecks, where feedback would be delayed or partial, but the protocol could be exercised without operational blowback. Label it R&D, keep it off the ops calendar, and you could push boundaries under the radar of ridicule. Jupiter fit that pattern perfectly, exotic, distant, and insulated from congressional questions like, how did you use this to brief a commander? The answer, safely, would be we didn't. We're testing limits. Hostile physics were part of the attraction. The planet's atmosphere stacks like a layer cake of pressure and chemistry, ammonia, water, hydrogen, moving at hundreds of miles per hour. For viewers, that meant sensory overload, pressure on the temples, sub-bass hums, metallic tastes that show up in transcripts when targets carry heavy machinery or electrical fields. If those signatures appeared independently across viewers in a place like Jupiter, it wouldn't prove anything on its own, but it would rhyme with known signal behaviors. The team wasn't looking for poetry, they were looking for repeatable rhymes. Still, they needed a question sharp enough to avoid imagination's drift. A tasking line took shape that cut out speculation and forced description. If non-terrestrial engineering exists at the target, describe. Not are there aliens? Not is there a base? Function before label. Identify geometry, materials, joints, conduits, flows, temperatures, anything that indicates design structure over weather. It was a way to box the mind. The moment a viewer wrote spaceship, they'd be off the rails. The moment they wrote grid, intake, oscillation, the analyst had something to grade against physics. There were cover stories within cover stories. Out loud, it was planetary training. In the memo margin, someone had scrawled, comms architecture? Another wrote resource calculus, a nod to helium, 3 fantasies, and metallic hydrogen lore that haunts speculative engineering papers. None of it was official tasking. All of it set a tone. If we find patterns of intake and exhaust embedded in a pressure band, that's not weather. If we find repeating lattice under shear, that's not a cloud. You don't need aliens to ask if something looks manufactured. You just need to keep nouns out of the room until functions stack. Picking the moment mattered. They cross-referenced Pioneer and Voyager flybys, not for data to feed the viewer. Nobody in the room would be allowed to know specifics, but to time their sessions near periods when the planet's dynamics were in flux. The thinking was crude but practical. Complex systems reveal structure when stressed. If a platform rode the bands like a ship in heavy seas, its behaviors would spike: intake rates, stabilization routines, field interactions, and a disciplined viewer might catch those spikes as motion, heat, resonance, or patterned vibration. Then they built the shield. A sealed envelope held only a random number tagged to Jupiter, described structure, if any, associated with non-natural engineering. No maps, no imagery, no briefing notes were allowed into the session space. The handler rehearsed neutral prompts. The analyst drafted a checklist keyed to functions: load-bearing shapes, regular spacing, non-fractal repetition, apparent interfaces with flow, energy conversion hints. The room went quiet in that particular way it does when people are about to do something that can't be explained or defended if it leaks. There was a quiet argument about feedback. Without photographs of a device in a Jovian jet stream, how would they score? The answer was unsatisfying and honest. You score against internal consistency and cross-viewer convergence, and you mark the file for future probe data. They'd done it before with deep ocean and historic targets. You accept that some questions are payment forward. You write tight transcripts today, so someone else can test them in a decade. It wasn't perfect. It was the only adult option. Finally, the envelope slid across the table. A random number on the front, the mass of a planet behind it. The handler breathed out slow. The viewer closed their eyes and started the cool down, the same way they would for a warehouse or a bridge. The label was cosmic. The discipline was the same. Across the mirrored glass, a pair of officers stood very still. Out in the courtyard, a gardener's blower laid a low hum under the walls. Inside, the silent room took the weight of a simple bet. If the signal doesn't care about distance, it won't care about Jupiter. The session begins inside the protocol. The door clicks, and the room settles into its practiced quiet. The viewer sits with forearms on the table, fingertips loose, eyes closed. Cooldown isn't mystic, it's mechanical. Slow breath. Drop surface chatter. Let the first signal twitch land without chasing it. The handler gives the target identifier only, numbers flat and even. No extra words, no tone that could be read as hint. The pencil waits above a blank sheet. An ideogram snaps down, fast, a reflex mark like a cardiogram spike. The viewer touches it with the pencil tip, eyes still closed. Movement, they say under breath. Broad. Layered. They drag a second ideogram, smaller, hooked. Dense. Pressure. The handler nods without moving the air and says the standard. From the top. The viewer breathes, then starts A B sensory descriptors. Ambient. B signal. They trade clipped adjectives like engineers calling out parts. A cool, still dry. B heavy, fast, wet, charged. Sensory bleed arrives early, like it always does when targets carry weather and fields. Pressure on the temples, the viewer notes. Sub-bass, like a far generator. Taste metallic, not blood, more ozone. The pencil scratches short staccato lines as the hand follows the internal contour. A quick block-in sketch appears, bands, then a curved intrusion that doesn't fit cloud logic. The viewer taps it. This keeps repeating. Feels structural. Regular spacing. The word natural floats up and the viewer swats it away, writes not natural, with a question mark, then circles the curve again. The handler throws gentle sinks. Stay with textures. The viewer touches the paper. Smooth hard, not stone. Maybe composite. Temperature shifts across edges, warm to cool in gradients. The analyst behind the glass tries not to smile because gradients mean function. The viewer lines in a lattice, thin members crossing under shear. Loads distributing, they murmur. Things flex but return. Not random. They redraw the bands, pencil sweeping left to right, then carve a shape that sits within, riding but not dissolving. Floating but they pause, anchored. Anchored to flow, not ground. The paradox hangs there, neat and unsettling. Guardrails keep the lane tight. The handler doesn't ask for labels, only functions. Describe the relationship between the structure and the environment. The viewer starts listing verbs: divert, intake, vent, stabilize, oscillate. They shade a region where the band curls. I feel a pull here like a throat. Material goes in. Heat leaves somewhere else. Their free hand presses their sternum, a reflex when the internal torque ramps up. It vibrates near the edges, regular pulses, not storm random. Ideograms recur as anchor points. The viewer lays 3 identical hooks, then bridges them with thin lines like catwalks. Grid work, they say softly, then halt, aware that nouns can hijack. They cross it out, rewrite grid-like. The pencil flips to the blunt end for shading. Shadowed interior volume here, they say, indicating cavities. Low reverberation. Feels dampened, like sound is swallowed. That note goes into the analyst's checklist under acoustic management, a tell for enclosed spaces doing work. The handler calibrates the pace, just enough friction to keep the viewer from drifting, not so much that the stream snaps. Move 10 meters along the long axis. The viewer shifts, breath changing, seeing repeating ribs, equal spacing, joints at regular intervals. The edges hum. I'm getting. They stop, rub their tongue against their teeth. A taste again. Sharp. Electrical. Not a shock, a field presence. They draw small chevrons along the edges, notation for directional flow. This side takes in. That side exhausts. Feels like harvesting motion from the band. The contradictions stack in clean lines. It's not bolted to anything, they say, voice a notch lower. It rides, but it holds position relative to the flow, like it has a keel, but the keel is made of wind. The handler gives a standard redirect, describe materials. The pencil tip taps. Smooth, hard, slightly yielding under stress. Not metal like iron. Maybe layered skins? They write laminate and underline it. Joints are clean, not rough cast. Precision. They hesitate. There's a repeating pattern of small protrusions, like ports or sensors. They tick. A microstory slips out, quick and human. Left ear goes warm when I pass this seam. The viewer says, hand at ear. It's like stepping near a transformer. They shake it off and keep writing. Low electric hum persists. Harmonics shift with band speed. The structure compensates, counter vibration increases with shear. They sketch an intake mouth, then add strakes downstream. This geometry looks like it wants to drink turbulence and turn it into steadier flow. Analyst guardrails hold the label pressure down. No ship, no building, only relationships. The viewer notes maintenance feel, then scribbles AOL next to it, self-policing the urge to narrate. The handler takes the cue. If maintenance occurs, describe the interface. The viewer touches the paper lightly, as if not to break something. Access paths are thin, linear. They cross voids. I sense traffic, but not people in suits, they say, catching themselves. Not humanists, more present signature. Rhythmic, purposeful. The paradox returns and locks in. Floating, yet anchored to a moving reference. The viewer repeats, slower, like tasting the logic. Anchoring system doesn't touch anything solid. Its control within chaos, holds a place in a conveyor. The pencil hovers, then writes a single word, clean and certain, without the question mark this time. Manufactured. The handler's pen stops. Behind the glass, the mirrored room feels like it leans in. The viewer's breathing settles, the hum in their description doesn't. The session notes are already heavier than weather. The moment everything changed, it's a base. The word sits there, manufactured, and the air leaves the room.